this is just a skill in itself. Um, in jujitsu, still to this day, I am relearning stuff constantly. I am refining stuff constantly. The things that I thought were important, every once in a while, I find out that they weren't important and they weren't very helpful and they weren't as valuable as I thought that they would be. And so I would say that in general, learning is just a skill in itself and not expecting one thing to get me through jujitsu forever, and basically understanding that, like, hey, I have an understanding of jujitsu today and it will hopefully be better a year from now. And so I don't need to be married to any ideas. I don't need to say, oh, this is what is important. Um, and that, like, learning that as a skill has been more relevant to me than anything. Now, I will give you a few specific things that I used to think of, that I used to believe were all that mattered, and I did have to unlearn them. And it was like, I remember specifically, like, being a purple belt and being really good at triangles. And I would win. I did so many tournaments that I have 4 or 5 matches, and I would literally get 4 or 5 triangles. And it just was my game. And then towards the end of purple, but mainly into brown belt, it stopped working. I would win, 2 matches, but I would lose my third because I would gas myself going for a triangle that wasn't there. And, even though it was this thing that was great for me at a time, and it was this thing that I go, oh, this will be what I do forever. I had gotten married to this idea of, I'm a triangle guy. This is what I do. And it started to be this thing that I was trying to hang on to. And when it finally clicked that, like, wait, my guard in general is good. I'm only able to triangle guys because I have a good guard. And I started to add back sweeps, and I started to add some ankle locks from bottom, and I started to open my game up again. That was when I really started to get good from my guard. And then what was crazy is I started to hit triangles again. And so, I wouldn't even say that you are getting rid of things, but sometimes you leave the thing for a little bit. You are just too close to the picture, and you've been obsessing about something for so long. And this has happened to me with a few other things. Knee cut was the same way. I would only knee cut when I was on top, and I was great at it. And then all of a sudden it stopped working, and I left it and I stopped doing it. And I started Toriano. I started to do other stuff. And then when I went back to the knee cut, my knee cut had gotten better, even though I hadn't focused on it for any amount of time. And so for me, I think that, yeah, I think that those two things specifically were things that, not, I didn't unlearn them, but I left them for a while so I could focus on other things. And then when I came back to them, I had actually learned them and I actually understood them deeper, because jujitsu is not a list of techniques that you need to know on the wall. It is a game that you play against another individual. And so when I started to think that way, it just started to change things for me. And I still focus on moves for very specific amounts of time, or very long amounts of time, or ideas for very long amounts of time. But then when they start to get stale, I've just gotten so much more comfortable about being like, nah, I don't do this anymore. I'm not focused on it anymore. It was just like, I focused for years on ankle locks as a black belt, and it was all I was doing. And I loved it. And like, I still have people that will come to me and be like, hey, why don't you ankle lock anymore? Like, maybe I will go back to it eventually. But for right now, there came a point where it stopped being as effective, because it was just, I got too close to the picture and everything was about the ankle lock. And then when I would step back for a little bit, I still do throw them up sometimes, but I enjoy playing top more. Eventually, all this passing and this top stuff that I'm going to do, I think eventually it'll get stale again and I'll need to do something else. And so that's what I kind of mean about this idea of it being a skill, of not getting too married to ideas and just being willing to sometimes take a few weeks. Because, like, for people that listen to the show, they know how big I am on focus, but something I don't talk about often is how big I am on, all right, you've been focusing too long. You've been focusing too much. You're starting to make jujitsu a job. It's not getting fun anymore. You're not innovating. And I tell myself this and I go, okay, now it's time for something new. And every time I've done that, yeah, I take a few weeks where I'm losing and I'm like, not doing as well. But like just going out and just training for a couple weeks with no real intention and just saying what's happening, what's fun. And then I start like lately I've been hitting, Americanas. Right? Americanas, who hits Americanas? Doesn't even work, right? But I've been hitting them a lot. And I'm like, well, I guess this is a thing. I guess I'm focused on this for a little bit. And a lot of times they can, you just learn things. You find what you should be focused on organically. You find what you should be learning organically. And so I would never say that I do really unlearn stuff. I just learn it a little deeper. But sometimes when I can't learn it deeper, I just leave it for a little bit and, let it simmer for a little bit and then come back to it.